So way back from in the early 80s, back in North Branch, I had some farm clients and they had a dairy farm. And I was out to their farm and they were both coughing, father and son. And I asked them, how long you've had that cough? They said, I don't know, 2, 3 weeks. And it's not getting any better. No, it's not really a cold. I don't know why. And they got checked and, you know, didn't do anything. And I said, when did it start? And they said, oh, maybe about 4 or 5 days after we baled hay. And I said, that hay was wet, wasn't it? Wasn't there a lot of dust in that hay you were baling back then? They said, yeah. I said, tell you what, let me get a slide. Let me have you cough some sputum onto this slide. And I took it back to the clinic and I looked and it was aspergillus spores. So I told them, why don't you call your doctor and tell him your veterinarian looked at something and thinks you might have aspergillus pneumonia. And they did, and the doctor called me and thanked me, and they got treated, and that was that. But here's the importance of this veterinary education and clinical pathology. Up here in Grand Rapids, we have a lot of blastomycosis and anaplasmosis and Lyme disease, of course, with all the deer ticks. But blasto, sometimes various years, we would see a case a week or one every 2 weeks. And so one of my clients came in with 2 dogs, and one dog had a swollen, painful eye and 103 temp, and the other dog had a painful leg at about 104 temp. And I was able to isolate the organism, look at the organism. They had blasto, and he had a cough. And I said, how long have you had that cough? He said, my wife just thinks it's a cigarette cough because he smoked. And I said, well, has anything been different? I said, you got 2 dogs there with blasto. Well, he said a month or so ago, I had some fresh black fill brought in around my house. And I said, well, I said, you got 2 dogs of blasto, you're coughing. You need to go see your physician and tell him that. You have 2 dogs of blasto, you had some fill brought in. And he did, and they x-rayed his lungs, and he had a fungal ball in his lung like this. And they sent him to Duluth for treatment. And that doctor called me and said, you probably saved his life. Another thing that people get up here that MDs fail to think about, a little more now, but it's still the last thing looked at, is people get kind of mild flu-like symptoms, and it comes and goes, and fever, no fever. And eventually, of course, if they get low on platelets and they have to get a transfusion, they figure it out. But anaplasmosis, spread by the deer tick, very misdiagnosed up here, happens a lot. So I had a client that had that problem, and it's easy to get a blood sample from a person too. You can use a little diabetic stick thing. Look at the blood on a slide, you might see, and this is not practicing medicine without a license, you're just doing some mild diagnostics. But if you see the morula, in the neutrophils, you know what it is. And so they called their physician, and of course they got him on doxycycline, but they'd been sick for quite a while, and it happens a lot. We hear about a lot of cases of that. So that's just where your education pays off. You might save somebody's life because of the knowledge you have multi-species wise, because they just have male and female.